Well, that was disappointing. I already made a part of this video. It didn't record for some dopey reason, but it appears to be working now. So anyway, it's a reply to STEPHEN BROUGH, who's apparently now made a video that he thinks is going to prove something. It'll obviously, in my opinion, be a piece of shit, and we'll find out very shortly. But I'm sure it's going to be stupid. So he's been ragging about this subject. I made a video 2 days before he wrote these comments, pointing out that we're arguing about an ellipse, okay, created by two focuses. Okay, I said this days ago. All right, and the real argument is the ellipse is only defined by a very tiny distance, okay, 1 millimeter. It's less than that, really, versus a radius that could be 7 meters. So it's 1 millimeter to 7 meters, a huge divergence in the ratio. And so you're really talking about an ellipse that's only different by 0.05, might even be 0.005 actually, but anyway, difference. So it's only a tiniest bit fatter here than it is here. Okay, just a little bit short this way and a little bit too fat this way. But that's it, just the tiniest of bits. And the whole argument is about what takes place here. Now he keeps saying that the math doesn't predict on a curved surface, but this L distance, the distance to the target, to the screen, is not assuming a flat surface. There's nothing in the math that says, oh, I already know that a flat surface is going to stretch everything as I move it further and further out, and I've compensated for that. Or I already know that's what happens on a flat surface. It's not predicting a flat surface because this distance isn't L anymore. Okay, it's not L. It's some other kind of distance. L is here, and L can be understood as being what basically you're saying is these two lines are some portion either longer than L or a little bit shorter than L. But however much this one is short L, this one's going to be longer than L. So essentially you can say the two vectors equal 2L. Okay, so if you add up this vector and you add up this vector, the answer is 2L. And so when you're predicting your center maximas and your maximas going around, the prediction is on this, in this space, 2L times 1/2, right? I mean, it's essentially, right? You're saying it's these two lines added together, and then, you know, halved as a radius. So I'm just saying there's a average between these two lines, and that average is the L, the location that the math is predicting. It just can't predict over here because it doesn't know what this L is. It doesn't know how far away that is. Can't predict that. So that's what the dispute is about. And he says he knows for certain that the math already has this accounted for, when of course it doesn't. And in nobody's, you know, you could watch Professor Lewin or somebody else, they don't predict that the actual nodes, you know, the center maximum, now clearly that's 2 nodes, okay? And they're just not realizing that, so they call it the center maximum 1 node when it's really not. But the rest of the nodes are all the same size. They don't talk about them getting bigger and bigger and bigger as they go out, because the math doesn't predict that. So anyway, so I'll read some of this garbage. So very well put in the sense that he's now talking about somehow I'm frustrated because I'm not able to delete or censor dissenting opinions, when obviously these aren't dissenting opinions. There's no science in any of your arguments. They're just garbage. You know, your endless drivel and crude drawings. So you've explained how the drawing is incorrect somehow, that the statement I made that it's an ellipse is incorrect. You've proven all that? No. Anyway, so he just keeps agreeing with people who are obviously obviously Farley, and he's always stealing somebody's name or some, you know, version of somebody's name. So he approves of that. He thinks that's the way people ought to operate on the internet, is by trying to pretend to be somebody else. He thinks that's a good tactic. Yeah. All right, anyway, very well put. I mean, what a pile of crap. It's also worth knowing that it has now openly refused to do the very test with a piece of string. I didn't refuse. I mean, I obviously said I'm not doing it until I understand why you think I need to do it. There's no evidence that the nodes get bigger. I haven't seen any physics lecture ever predict them getting bigger. So why do I have to think they do get bigger? And why do I have to think, that the L variable doesn't matter? So I want to understand why you think I have to meet evidence that doesn't exist. That's the part I'm curious about. Okay. Anyway, that he's been lecturing us for a year, predicts the fringes without any of that complicated math he hates so much. So again, that's not my argument, and that's not what I've stated in a sense. Okay, I mean, I've argued that you can understand the experiment that way. You can understand that this that this one has to get shorter by the same amount this one gets longer. And so the string provides a very good illustration of the concept. Obviously, I can't draw it to those proportions, though. I can't make this, 20,000 times smaller, okay, than the distance here. I can't draw it realistic. So again, I couldn't even do it with string realistically. I can't do it to those proportions. So yeah, it works as an idea. It doesn't, but you have to modify the idea with your imagination, and you're not able to do that. So yeah, of course you don't understand. All right. Yes, that's right. He has now said on the record he refuses to do it. So again, this is more of this lying. I've clearly qualified why I had a resistance to pull out a piece of string and physically do it. And I explained it. I said it's because I want to understand conceptually why it would be possible. I said none of my intuition indicates there could be any possibility, okay, that the nodes could get dramatically bigger. There's no reason for it, as far as I can understand, from the dimensions of these triangles. I mean, these hugely long sides, okay, and these tiny angles. I just can't find an excuse for saying the one side is going to get longer and one side is going to get shorter by some huge amount of difference, because it's rolling on one circumference. Anyway, could that be because he has finally realized it doesn't obey point 2 of his silly list? So again, he calls the list silly, but he doesn't articulate in any way how anything on the list is wrong. So we have zero evidence that anything on the list is incorrect, and he just keeps saying it's silly. So he's saying that the math understands an infinite plane. It already has built into the math. When we see Professor Lewin do his little simple math, somehow that simple math, with that sine theta times L, somehow that math knows it's an infinite plane. I don't think it does, Steve. I don't think it has any chance of knowing that. Anyway, a curved surface with radius L is in fact a circle or a part of, and if you mark off those equal fringes as Gary dictates they must be, then measure their actual path length difference, guess what? The path length difference decreases. The path length difference decreases. I don't even understand what that could possibly mean. All we care about is whether it's a full wavelength or not, and how much territory you have to cover to get to a full wavelength. So, that can't possibly be a sensible statement. It really can't be. Say in the case I just drawn. Okay, so right here. Say, in the case I've just drawn. So clearly you can't draw 20,000 to 1 ratio. You can't draw a 20,000 to 1 ratio between the distance between the 2 point sources and the distance of the outside of your ellipse. You can't do it. It's physically not possible. you know, unless you draw it outside somewhere, you know, like in a park. Okay, the increase in path length differences are, so here he goes, 37 millimeters, 33 millimeters, 24 millimeters, and 9 millimeters. So he's saying they get smaller, which doesn't make any sense. As they go that way towards the infinite plane, they should get much bigger. And clearly as the angle gets smaller, they should also get bigger. So that's not even intuitive. Alright, for each of the 4 segments I have divided a quarter circle into. So a quarter circle he's divided into 4 segments. For what reason, I have no clue. Okay, I will show in the video and make it easier to grasp. Great, that's going to be fun. Alright, the point is his theory does not work. So again, he's saying this stuff emphatically in capital letters, blah, 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 blah. His list of claims is BS. Well, you really haven't shown anything to be BS, and you certainly haven't shown how their math predicts these lopsided fringes, and you haven't shown me a single physicist ever predicting these lopsided fringes. Alright, what Gary has pinched. So he said, you know, again, this implication, I've stolen an idea he said doesn't work. Does that make any sense? So I stole an idea that doesn't work. Yeah, you're just like, you know, this is face palmable, right? Okay, are borrowed off the person who first suggested the piece of string idea in his comments a year or so ago. It's just no point, right? Actually makes an ellipse. I said that 3 days ago, Steve. Are part of. Well, it either is or isn't. Okay, you can't have, you know, part. You can't be a little pregnant. You can't be a little bit of an ellipse. A circle as dictated by point 2 of his silly, pretentious list. And again, that's not what my list says, okay? My list just says it's supposed to be on a curved surface. And I've said curve, 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 curve. So that, again, is a lie. Thank you for lying some more and proving my point. Okay, so it can't have radius L. So he's saying it doesn't have a radius? Clearly it has the same radius, and the radius is 3 meters. So it's 6 meters 0.05 versus 5 meters 0.95. And you're saying that huge difference makes a difference. And of course it's not a huge difference. It's a tiny difference. He is an idiot. He doesn't appear to know the difference between a circle and an ellipse. So again, 3 days ago, I did the video explaining exactly that. So obviously horseshit. Alright, he also doesn't appear to be able to mentally accept the sad reality for him that it is impossible for the fringes to have equal width around a curved surface. Okay, so that's his statement. Any more than a flat surface. So the fact that a flat surface is infinite, okay, doesn't mean that it's going to be especially difficult. It's not a finite surface. And he thinks they're the same. They're no different. Curved surface, you know, closed circle, 180 degrees, is the same as infinite. Yeah, okay. Because they are essentially triangles getting squashed flatter and flatter, so to speak. Doesn't matter. What grows on one side shrinks on the other side. So they always remain, okay, 2L. You know, in terms of the total amount of distance. Let's see, what's that the right way to say it? I mean, to be strictly speaking, to L. Yeah, it's right. And the path length difference necessitates a greater and greater angle sweep. So again, you can keep saying it's greater and greater, and I'm going to keep saying, show me, because the amount of difference is so slight that I don't think you'd be able to see it. Okay, there must be a better way of explaining, but I'm stuck for words that Gary or his flock might understand. So, yes. What a pile of shit. Alright, I challenged this curved screen idea with the rough, crappy video. So the video that has, at least it has a decent double slit pattern in it, but again, obviously there's no challenge in that video because you're obviously not going far enough to see any differences. The differences are only going to see once you start getting to 30 or 40 degrees. So, you know, just play some more retarded games, which is all you're capable of because you're a retard. Anyway, I'm more proud of my one man. Okay, so he just did this double stick experiment, which proves everything I've been saying about surfaces. You couldn't illustrate that it's about the surfaces any more directly than to point out that I can close the surfaces with sticks and then get rid of the experiment, just leave the sticks. And no waves can get through the sticks kind of thing. So, of course, you've changed dramatically the wave functionability of the experiment, and yet you get the same results, which kind of proves my point that it's about the surfaces, not the opening. The openings, who cares? The surfaces and their distance from each other is all that matters, because the fringes are being caused by photons that travel near the surface. Those are the photons that scatter, diffract, okay, and become the fringes. If the photon travels through the center, the end. So I don't know why there's two links here. I suppose one of them is the link to this this steaming pile of shit video that no doubt it will be. So let's play it and suffer through it. We'll suffer through the beginning of it anyway. We'll see how horrible it is to listen to, you know, crappy music and shit accusations.
A year ago, someone suggested to Gary that he gets a piece of string.
All right, so I don't know where he's going to find the evidence for this, that a year ago somebody suggested it. Okay, so he's not going to show us that. So he says he saves everything. Well, go ahead, show us that.
Between the slit distances, and then she marks notches all the way along the string, and then does this with it, arcs it all the way around in a circle like that, and then he marks where the notches line up. Now, although Gary never shuts up about this piece of string trick, he's never actually done it.
So, I mean, I have a video. There's no, I'm pretty damn sure it's one of the public videos, so I'm pretty sure it's a video, where STEPHEN BROUGH, I read a comment of his where he says he saw this as a kit when he was a kid to explain the double slit experiment, where they used this exact technique. He said that. So why is he saying this now, that it doesn't work?
Because if he had, he would realise it doesn't give the results he thinks it gives. For a year he's been telling us that it gives evenly spaced fringes all around that circle, or all around that semicircle, but it doesn't. It creates an uneven spacing, the same as Walter Fender showed it.
Okay, so Walter Fender's video, I showed the simulation. The simulation didn't even have the width of the openings in it. Nowhere in the math. The outside surfaces weren't in the simulation. They aren't considered relevant. It was the single impediment simulator. It wasn't a double slit experiment. It's like you holding up one stick and saying, there, simulate one stick. That's the double slit experiment. There's no denying this, Steve. It's in his own open source code, you fucking idiot. All right? There is no second set of surfaces. He only has two surfaces in his fucking simulator. You fucking insane lying sack of dirty smelly shit. Now I've already said this before. I've already pointed this out. So this is just part of the belligerent denial of these people. Why the fuck are you defending a two slit demonstration that doesn't have the slits in it? I mean, it's right on its page, okay? This distance is the only distance in his math. This distance. There is no opening. There's no opening distance. These two surfaces are not in his math, you asshole.
in his simulation about 20 years ago. And now Gary was laughing at that the other day about Walter Fenn being wrong, but it's Gary who's been wrong.
I mean, there's just no point. It's clearly not simulating the double slit experiment. The math is fundamentally inaccurate.
That's how we know that Gary hasn't actually done this string trick, even though he talks about it all the time.
No, you keep talking. You keep talking and not doing. So show us.
He hasn't actually done it. Because if he had, he would know you get a different result than Gary thinks you get. Now, a more reliable way of doing it, obviously, is to use actual tape measures. So let's do it.
Okay, so let's do it. So he's got nanometer distances on his tape measure. This tape measure has nanometer difference, 500 nanometers. Yeah, he has a little marking right here. 500 nanometers, 500 nanometers, 500 nanometers. And this distance is somehow these, 7 inches? So he has the L distance at 7 inches, and he has the wavelength of the light at 1 inch? Yeah, so you're only thousands of times off in your percentages, in your ratio. So he's comparing an ellipse, right? I mean, this is so obvious a mistake and so obviously stupid on his part that I shouldn't even have to do this. But I mean, you could figure this out just by, if you draw 2 points. Now, if I'm going to make an ellipse, you could understand that the smaller my distance is. So I'm just going to say I'm going to take a distance from this center point, okay, a radius. The smaller my center point, the more eccentric the ellipse. So at 1 inch, the ellipse is that shape. At 2 inches, the ellipse is more like this. At 3 inches, maybe it's more like this. See, it starts getting rounder and fucking rounder as you make this L distance, more and more increments of the distance between these two focuses. So in the real double slit experiment, we're talking about thousands to 1, 10,000 to 1 ratio between this distance and L. Is he illustrating that? Oh, no, he isn't, is he? Fuck.
Again, okay, so the first notch that Gary says isn't the first notch, but I'm going to mark it. Let's just assume it is anyway. Let's not argue about that for now. Don't know if we can get the cameras coming any closer. There, I'm lining up that mark there on this ruler with the mark on that ruler. So they're lined up there exactly. I've got my glasses on so I can be as accurate as I can. I don't want to make any mistakes. And I'll do what the person suggests.
I don't even understand what you're doing. You have it inverted. Where's the 2 point sources? You're supposed to be going from 2 point sources, 2 foci, to a point. You're not supposed to be going from whatever to a point, like this.
To Gary, I'll mark where all the notches line up, and that tells us where all the notches should be around that curved surface, okay, that semicircle. You can see underneath actually, I've already done it. You can see there, that's a bit of a giveaway.
So he's got upside down, okay, so, where normal rational people would do it this way, he's doing it this way. Yeah, because he hits a retard.
This many times. Gary's never done it clearly, otherwise he would know what the results are going to be. Everybody else knows what the results are going to be. Anyway, so let me show.
So if you don't understand the theory, if you don't think about it first, what is an ellipse and why is it an ellipse? And this is, again, sort of to the Einstein argument again, where people are surprised that Mercury is different than all the other planets by this tiny little factor. And the reason why it's different than all the other planets by that tiny little factor is because it's really close to the sun. So any vibrations in the sun are going to be felt by Mercury, but because all the other planets are so far away, they don't feel it. And the same thing happens in this case. Because the two focuses are so close together, they can't be perceived by something 3 meters away as not being in the same exact place, pretty much. You can't see the difference between those 2 points.
So you, if it's the first time for you, again, so I put that there where those 2 notches line up. So now we look for where they line up again a second time. Oh.
So he's doing an ellipse from these 2 sources at the top. These are the 2 focuses. So his proportions, okay, between the distance here, so he has these 2 points. So those are your nanometers. That's supposed to be less than 1 millimeter, these 2 points. And these rulers are supposed to be, say, 3 meters long. So that's how far off this is as being proportional to the actual experiment. So of course this will be a hugely eccentric ellipse. If he was just to take that string and go around, he would see the ellipse it makes would be very, very clear and obvious. It would be an obvious ellipse. But at the real dimensions, it's going to be not obvious at all. It's going to look like a perfect circle. At 3 meters, if he just makes those rulers 3 meters wrong, he'll see it getting rounder. And then if he makes the separation 1 inch instead of 2 inches, he'll improve the circle even more. And he'll just keep getting more and more circular the wider and the more fair he is to the actual experiment. So, too stupid though. He doesn't do the thinking part first. And that's what I was emphasizing. You should understand why it would be possible, and that really helps in not making these kind of stupid mistakes. See, if I would have pulled out the string, I might have made the same mistake he did. I might have pulled out the string and I said, gee, it's not working at all. And I would have said, oh, it fails. Because I didn't think about it first.
There. Okay, the next notch. Can you see? I don't know. Let me try and get the camera a bit closer, because you need to see this. So you can see where I've lined those 2 notches up. Then you swing it around, you arc it around, and you mark where the next one lines up, okay? Put another dot there. Then you do the same again there. Oops. Line those 2 up. Then we carry on with next notch.
Right, and if you put all those little notches together, connected all those little dots, you'll see an obvious ellipse. An obvious one. But that's not the circle. That's not the curved line that is being projected on by the photons. That curve isn't nearly as strong an ellipse.
Remember, Gary thinks that these are evenly spaced. So that's how we know he's not done it, because so then this one, notches lined up. The next one.
So he's using quarter inch markings. I think those are quarter inch. They might be centimeters. Don't know. Markings to indicate a wavelength difference. Right. There's a million wavelengths in that quarter inch. Okay, so way off.
Okay, and again. And the next one.
So this is the boring redundancy. He doesn't even understand the part that's important for people to see. We don't need to see all of this, Steve. You just do it and say, yeah, this is the procedure I followed, and then you just jump ahead. Okay, I don't need to see you put 20 dots on a piece of paper.
Tilt the camera up some more. You can see my problem here, because that's that one. That one's fair enough. And that one, that's okay. Yeah. I can tilt the camera up a bit so you get to see the next one. And there we go. So it never, can you see that they never actually, it's looking to line up with that one, but it never does, just because of the spacing that we have. And if I went beyond...
Right, exactly, just because you've put it in such a limited box. Okay, and it's just a half a node. You've made the nodes too big. So now the node can't, it's the node, your eccentrically large node stops here, and it restarts on the other side.
It's 90 degrees. It would only start going back on itself. So that's the limit, okay. So let me take the camera out a bit so you can get a more overall view now. You see we've got a mark there, there. I need to make them clearer for you. Okay, I'll make the marks clearer. Put a circle around them.
And so that's just pointing out, like I said, if it was a circle, there wouldn't be any reason for there to be any difference, because the circle is a circle from all points of view. So there couldn't possibly be a difference, because one side wouldn't be wider on the circle and one side wouldn't be narrower. So the only reason why there's a difference in the spacing is because his circle is squished here and widened here. So obviously they have to get further spaced where the circle is getting wider. Duh. But that's because, again, the point is the real experiment at 3 or 4 meters radius, okay, even using quarter inches, you wouldn't see this difference. If he drew these dots with rulers that were 3 meters long, you'd see a lot more symmetry between the dots.
X. Most rational people can see that the spacings are not the same. They're getting wider and wider apart the further around we go.
Right, and this won't be shown anywhere in any physics lecture. So this detail, he says, is a fact, that they get bigger and bigger, isn't one I've ever heard any physicist ever say. So I've never seen any physics professor talk about the two-slit experiment or analyze it. Not Khan Academy, not whatever his name is, I Lecture Online guy, not Professor Lewin, not the guy at Yale. No, nobody. Not Richard Feynman. No one has ever said the nodes get bigger, the fringes get bigger and bigger as you go further out. The same. Now, it does happen with some diffraction where you get that bullseye with the big bullseye in the center, and then they get smaller and smaller as you go further out. But that has to do with the fact that it's spherical. And so that's a whole different, there's a different reason for that change.
Let me measure as accurately as I can. I'll measure as accurately as I can. So this one is 43 millimeters. Okay, 43.
Right, 43 millimeters, and if you would have made the rulers 15 inches, these numbers would be completely different. So the nodes would be a completely different size, blah, 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 blah. And the ratios would be completely different because the ellipse would be completely different. Truth.
3 millimeters. The next one is 44 millimeters. 44 millimeters.
So he's going to just bore us to death.
I think 45.
Here.
I'm not sure if it's 45 or 46. Say 45 millimeters. The next one is, I'm sorry if I'm in the way of the camera, 49 millimeters there. 49.
So just to understand just how far off from the real experiment. He has the slits at a 2-inch separation, and he only has like 10 inches for the L number. Where the real ratios would be thousands to 1. He has 2 to 1. I mean 3 to 1, 4 to 1. So thousands to 1 versus 10 to 2, let's say. So that's 5 to 1. So 5,000 to 1 versus 5 to 1. And he says he nailed it. He's proven something.
So it's growing exponentially, isn't it? The next one is 52 millimeters. 52 millimeters. 50.
Yes, it is growing exponentially, and if you put it on a flat surface, it is infinite. Do you really think the pattern goes infinitely, moron?
59 millimeters, yes. 59 millimeters. 74 millimeters, 74 or 75. And then the next one goes off the scale to the edge of the paper where I put the X. That's 123. 1, 2, 3, greater than. So folks.
So I wonder if he did the actual figuring out of what the proportions are. What the rate, what the amount of increase is. Because it's kind of funny that 43, 44, 45, then jumps to 49, and then 52 is only 3, so it jumped 4, and then it jumps 3, and now it jumps 7. And now it jumps 14, 15. Interesting ratio.
You can see that Gary has obviously never actually checked this, because otherwise he would know that these fringes get exponentially bigger.
So again, he says this actually happens in real life this way with photons. So photons work at this ratio, 5 to 1. Even though obviously in the real photon experiment the ratio is 5,000 to 1 or 50,000 to 1. I mean, I didn't go figure it out, but it's thousands to 1.
43, 44, 45, 49, 52, 50.
It's 3 meters to 1 millimeter. What is that? 1 millimeter to a meter would be 1 million, right? No, there's 1,000 millimeters in a meter. 10 in a centimeter, 10 centimeters in a decameter, 10 decameters in a meter. So it's 1,000. So it's 4,000 or 5,000 to 1. And he just did 5 to 1 and says it's the same thing. 5 to 1, 5,000 to 1. Same thing.
74 over 123. So what Gary's been teaching us for a year is utter nonsense. Now, that's not a surprise to me because there are so many other things that Gary has been teaching.
So more mush, blah, 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 blah.
Us utter nonsense about too. This is just one of many examples.
Yeah, blah 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 blah. Just promises, no facts ever. Okay, no evidence of all of these terrible crimes I have committed against physics. I've had my videos up for almost a year on the 3 subjects. He hasn't touched them.
Teaching us how loudspeakers work. It's just laughable. You can take a loudspeaker apart. He couldn't be bothered.
Oh, so he's still ragging about the fact that I gave a little short generalization about speakers. There's different kinds of speakers, as I've already pointed out. You know, the ones in a telephone are a lot different than the one in a stereo. So what I was saying was perfectly legitimate, but he just keeps ragging this stupid rag.
Does that look like a steel rod to you?
So
just imagine if they made loudspeakers.
Still doing. I can't believe he's still horse shitting about this speaker crap. So we're not playing that. That's just a waste of time.
And they're clearly never are his own. They're always someone else's work. So I mentioned Professor Walter Fenn.
Okay, so he did again. Yeah, he mentioned Professor. I went to the guy's animation, simulation, and I showed how it's grotesquely mislabeled. It's not the double slit, you retard. You still can't figure that out? There's nothing in the mathematics behind his simulation doesn't have the width of the slits in it. You have to realize that's kind of a critical problem in describing the double slit. That you're only describing the single impediment or the single slit if you leave out the other set of surfaces.
Simulations, what brilliant work he used to do. And probably
okay, just such horrible.
Still does. That we should all be grateful for. And Gary used that as an excuse to make a video and mock Walter Fenn for making mistakes, which Walter Fenn...
I didn't mock him. I called it shit. Because why would you label it the double slit experiment when it's not even close to the double slit experiment? It's clearly the single impediment math. You can't call the single impediment math the double slit experiment. That's just fucking lying, Steve. Why are you saying it's okay to do that? You just showed in your video a very good pattern, a double slit pattern. You think all I have to do is show the single impediment pattern and call it the double slit pattern and say, there, I did a good job, I did good science? If I did that, if I made such an egregious statement and said the single slit pattern is the same fucking thing, the single impediment is the double slit experiment. If I said that, you'd say, oh, he's an asshole, he's an idiot. But that's what your asshole, the idiot you're defending, did. It's labeled the double slit experiment. There's no fucking slits in it, you shithead.
And hadn't made it. It was Gary who'd made the mistakes. And he was trying to mock me and laugh at me because I'd supported someone, said Walter Fenn's work is brilliant. So Gary was laughing at me saying, you were saying his work's brilliant and he's made a mistake, he's got them all the wrong distances. And he hasn't. His work was correct.
Okay, so he says it was correct. It's not correct. It's idiotic. The only thing right about it was the curved screen, but everything else was wrong. The math was rubbish.
It was Gary who was wrong. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Gary. When Gary does...
No, you stick it. You stick a 2x4 up your ass till dead, and it'll make me very happy.
Get something anywhere near right. It's very unlikely to ever have been his own work, and that's why he has to get...
Oh, it's just so disgusting, these people that can say this kind of horseshit when I've done all of this publicly. I mean, it's just retarded to sit there and say this is somebody else's work. It's insane. I mean, I have the scribblings on my note paper. I mean, should I, I have to archive that because you assholes have zero evidence to back up your retarded claims that you can just shit out of your mouth? This fucking accusation that you can't defend. You're disgusting. What a fucking goddamn weasel you are.
On the defensive. What kind of a person goes around stealing other people's work?
So again, where did this happen? It's just disgusting that he gets away with saying this kind of horseshit, that I've stolen something from somebody when, again, then if I was just going to steal it, why did I bother drawing all those drawings and trying to make things fit? It doesn't make any sense at all. It's so goddamn stupid for him to say this shit.
Trying to pass it up as his own. What kind of character does that? A nasty person like
You have
that.
no
Anyway,
fucking proof of that, you lying, slandering, weaselly hunk of shit. All right, and you just can't get any you know, anything that misfortune you can have happen to you, I will celebrate, because it's what you fucking deserve, because you're a fucking liar. A disgusting, foul, smelly, lying piece of shit.
Now, there's another claim he keeps making as well now. I'll end this video here for the moment. Actually, the next claim that Gary makes, I can probably carry on with this diagram, extend it further outwards and carry on showing something else that Gary's got wrong. Gary's made a big deal about when these are pointing inwards from the width of the slit, this first constructive interference point here. He says that isn't.
So he has it upside down. Does it make any sense? No, it doesn't make any sense. So again, the point sources are up top. All right, and so we're doing the single slit. All right, so the 2 point sources are the surfaces. Let's re-emphasize. Okay, they're 1 millimeter apart. Okay, so he has them 1 inch apart, at least, maybe 2 inches. And now he's going to show me that they're not inside of 2 inches. That everywhere they go, it's just going to be 2 inches. He's not going to show me that they're going to land within that 2 inches. Now, if we take that 2 inches and put it on the real experiment, you'd realize that, I mean, I shouldn't have to draw this again. All right, how many times have I done this, right? So this is, to all you people who are going to defend this little weasel, how many times have I been over this? There's no way this is, you know, you can't call him just some kind of dishonest motherfucking piece of shit to force me to say this over and over again when it's so fucking obvious. The point is that inside the experiment, right? So we have the two surfaces. This is less than, okay, 1 millimeter. Can be a lot less. Could be a 0.5 millimeter. This 2 points that intersect cannot, okay, 2 lines being the same length, they can intersect here, they can intersect here, they can intersect here, they can intersect in lots of places, but it's always going to be within 1 millimeter. There's nothing else there. They're always going to be in the tiniest amount of space. When we know the nodes are going to be this big or bigger, you know, many millimeters. How can something happening in 1 millimeter compete with something that's so huge? Obviously it can't. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a tiny little point inside of 1 millimeter where the 2 lines are the same. And obviously I've explained that the obvious giveaway is they're going in opposite directions, and every other node will be decided by 2 lines going in the same direction. 2 lines in the same direction, 2 lines in the same direction, 2 lines in the same direction, 2 lines in the same direction. This is an aberrant happening inside of 1 millimeter. Now the other point I made is that obviously the scatter coming this way and the scatter going this way, right, that doesn't go to a focus, that goes out this way. That scatter, that diffraction, gets magnified with distance. So the further away you go, the wider those angles get. It's a projection. It's a cone. Okay, it's a cone. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you go further and further and further. This distance gets bigger, 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 bigger. So this is getting magnified. All of the fringe is magnified. Obviously, this can't be magnified. Obviously. Oh, man, what a fucking idiot.
A guaranteed constructive interference point, because you should start up there and work your way around, and these might work out the same. That's an interference point. They could be a destructive interference point, or anywhere between the two. It says at this point, where these are pointing inwards, that's a tiny millimetre or sub-millimetre distance, and it is, because that is a sub-millimetre distance typically.
Okay, so that proves the point. The node has got to be it's got to be centimeters across. It's got to be inches across. The node is huge. How can something happening inside of 1 millimeter span 5 centimeters? It can't, shit for brain.
That's fundamentally different to when they're pointing outwards. So here they're no longer pointing inwards. So he says this is fundamentally different from here on. And yet we can mark, let me try and now mark the minima. I will first of all mark some more maxima going the other way, doing the same notching up lining business as we just did. One notch there, we do another one there, another one there, and there. Can you see them okay? There, and there. Well, that's what to do for now. So let me make those clearer again. Circle, circle. Now using a green.
Okay, and you did this again with proportions that aren't even close on the wrong shape. So again, so it can't prove anything. What you needed to do was go just shy of this first node. Just go a little bit over here. Well, what you really need to do is go, you have to recognize this is a straight line. So what he's missing, see where these two lengths are hanging down straight? Those are really straight lines from the perspective of the surfaces. Those are the straight lines. So he has the straight lines 1.5 inches apart. Okay, so he has, so it's creating a huge amount of space here. It's creating 2 inches of space here. I mean, that's what's making it look like, oh, I moved the ruler a little bit off this space. Well, no, you didn't move it a little bit. You moved it a gigantic amount because you have these things 2 inches apart. This is supposed to be just 1 millimeter. You can't see how that's a complete fraud. Okay, these two lines are really right next to each other inside the space of 1 millimeter, and your node is going to be here. So the trick is to go to this location and see what it is in this location. And you haven't even gotten outside of that because your 2 inches has already wiped out all of the center. You've abolished the entire center because you have 2 inches. You have these idiotic proportions. You have 5 to 1 instead of 5,000 to 1. Oh, what an idiot.
In pen, I will mark the halfway points, but I'll have to... Exactly halfway between the notches lining up is where the destructive interference should be. So let's mark those. I think we can guess, can't we? That...
So he's still marking inside of the 2 inches. He's able to get nodes inside of it because it's 2 frickin' inches.
They're going to be... You don't need to be a genius to work out that they'll be halfway. I'm not going to do them all. Oh, why not? Carry on. Let's not be lazy. Let's not do it, Gary. Right, so I'll just put a line for all the destructive interference. So you can see where there's a line, that's destructive interference. That's our central maximum. I'm going to put CM just to remind us that's our central maximum.
Okay, so the destructive interference is this distance, the distance from this. So I guess that would be 22 millimeters. Would be the node sizes. Is 22 millimeters. And so it should be drawn here and here for the ons. And so you do have an off in the center now. It's still, I'm just trying to look and see the distances. So this does look a little closer, frankly. I mean, the distance from here to this off does look shorter than the distance from this on to this off, from what I'm seeing. So in a sense, even though he has these horrible proportions, he's still not getting exactly the right numbers. But whatever. The point is that you can't do the experiment this way. Your model isn't proportional to reality. So you're showing us how it's like me making a Noah's Ark out of popsicle sticks and then sticking it in water and say, look, it works, it floats. When if I tried to make it out of real lumber at the proportions of the ark, it would snap in two.
Now, a point worth mentioning is that really this is a load of old nonsense anyway, because in reality, nobody ever sees the fringes going beyond about those points there. That's pretty...
Right, and what's your theory for that? Right? Richard Feynman says they go there. So you're saying Richard Feynman's wrong, but you won't say those words. You won't say Richard Feynman's wrong.
Pretty much all you ever see, that between my hands. A very narrow range. There's nothing to see around here in reality.
It's not that narrow. It's a good 20 or 25 degrees, which is, 25 degrees into 180 degrees, so that's what, 1/7, 1/6 of the pattern.
I've never seen it, and I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now. Gary's been pretending to do it for about 10 or 11 years, and he's never seen it. He just pretends it's there. I think everybody...
I never pretended it was there. I've often, many, many times, talked about how they never did the experiment where they just put 2 photographic plates beside the experiment, just see how many of those photons they can collect. I thought it would be a very valuable experiment. I've talked about it. I've said that point. I've made that point in these videos that are real videos on the internet, archived. I've made that point years ago. So it's just more of a lie that somehow I'm saying photons actually go to 98 degrees. I don't know. I've speculated that they don't, because I've speculated that there aren't enough electrons to hit to be bent that much. So a photon isn't likely to hit enough electrons to create enough angular deflection to get there. Not enough pieces get there to reconstruct a photon. It's such a rare occurrence that a piece of a photon interacts with enough electrons to be deflected that amount.
Pretends it's there. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's hard to say because nobody ever sees it. So we are actually talking about fringes that no one ever actually sees because they're so...
It is part of the theory, so that's the whole point. That's why it would be a valuable experiment to do, to see if those fringes actually exist. That's what science should have done. Now, the fact that you can't say those simple words that they should have done that experiment, and instead you keep defending this bad science, just like you're defending a simulation called the double slit experiment, and there's no slits in it.
Far out and so weak, so feeble, that it's arguable whether we actually do have any at those angles. Gary's pretending that he knows for a fact that we do.
Okay, that's just a lie. So it's an overt lie. I've never said one way or the other. I've speculated that I tend to think there don't exist there. That's what I have said. So he just overtly lied.
But Gary doesn't know any such thing. I've already pointed out that Gary knows.
So, silly straw man. So this is the best he can do. He keeps saying I'm wrong about things, and yet I'm wrong about things you just made up, asshole. Because you're never going to find evidence where I said it's certain there's photons going there.
There's very little at all. Everything Gary pretends he knows, that's just that, pretense. It's guesswork. Yes, the science is all about guesswork, but testing your guesses, that's the one thing Gary knows.
Yeah, right. You just tested exactly how you're not supposed to test, which is recklessly, sloppily, without paying any attention to what has already been told to you in my video, right? So my video, I pointed out this very problem, and you paid no attention. I pointed out that the ellipse loses all of its visibility as you expand the ellipse. As the distance between the focuses, the ratio between the distance between the focuses and the distance of your radius, as that ratio increases, your ellipse gets less and less visible.
Ever does. Gary guesses and then on claims those things as facts. Unless he has a better idea or what he thinks is a better idea, and then he starts saying, well, forget what...
I say this is all just such a waste of time. He throws in all this crap. Alright, I don't bother making my videos saying, oh, what does Stephen Brough say on every subject? Every fucking video you make, you have to taint it with this garbage. If you have a point to make, then defend it. You just did a shitty experiment. You know, proving something. You didn't prove anything, right? Because it's a shitty experiment. You do understand, right? That's how it works. That your experiment has to have some sort of credibility, and yours has none. Because you ignored the part that I told you was really important, which was you have to think about it. And you didn't think about it. Alright, that's enough. So, I mean, it's just, yeah, like I said, he's just such a despicable liar. Alright, let's see what these commenters. So Steve Godfrey, who knows nothing about physics, nothing. 0. Okay, physics isn't about getting off your ass and doing silly experiments or understanding math nonsense. So I don't know where he's going with this crap. It's about idle chalkboard doodles. So again, that's what he's calling pointing out how the two vectors that are the same length pointing to the center are inside of 1 millimeter. Doing that is doodles. Yeah. Okay. Invincible and invincible ignorance. So again, ignorance of what, Steve? So I have 3 videos on photons, gravity, and energy. Why don't you take a shot at them? Why don't you explain how something in those videos is fundamentally incorrect, and you'll show me a piece of evidence somewhere. Show me it taking 4 times more gas to go 60 miles an hour. Show me. Than 30. I'll take Gary's children refrigerator drawings over verified and repeated experimental data any day. So again, he thinks it has been verified. So when the video that I responded to by Dr. Lincoln, he thinks that was a credible explanation of the double slit experiment, when he didn't even talk about the two patterns. So Stephen Brough will no doubt say something complimentary to Steve, even though Steve doesn't care about any of these details. I mean, it's just so bad. All right. Yeah, you are. Who are these people who think we should read the information that comes with slits? So there's these, horrible little numbers they put on some of these slits. I should show the one I have left. It doesn't really tell you. It doesn't tell you nanometers or decameters, or it's really not readable. But anyway, those numbers and letters are meaningless compared to the good old-fashioned guess. So again, this doesn't have anything to do with the subject. It really doesn't have anything to do with the subject, Steve. You do understand this, right? You must understand that I can take your pattern and just dissect it, even by their math. Even using their math, I can just look at the pattern you're showing, and I can just count the bars, and I can tell you how big the opening was. Even with their math, idiot. What is your obsession? It's just ununderstandable. Okay. Captain Opossum. So this is Farley. I'm surprised more scientists don't use the trademark Gary method. So when Richard Feynman drew those silly drawings, that's good science. So when he put the two humps, like the two slits would be separating, their two patterns would be separating in space. So even though the two slits are only a millimeter apart, and the pattern they're going to create would only be a millimeter different in space, that is, the two patterns would be right on top of each other. So these are the facts, right? And they hate these facts so much, okay, that they're going to sit there and slander me and defend these horrible scientists. I mean, they're horrible. So Richard Feynman draws this, right? He says, okay, here's the opening from one slit, here's the pattern, and here's the pattern from the other slit. The slits are a millimeter apart. Okay, so okay, 1 millimeter. The whole experiment is 1 millimeter in size. How can the pattern from this slit go over here? And how does the pattern from this slit go over here? That doesn't happen. The pattern, even if we use Young's wave analysis, the pattern has to go here. There's no hump over here and hump over here. All you could possibly do is create two patterns, okay? The one slit's pattern would be here, the other slit's pattern would be 1 millimeter away. That's the truth. But the truth doesn't matter. This is just a silly drawing. This doesn't mean anything. Facts aren't important. This is how disgusting these people are. They're so foul. You can't even describe the extent of the lack of intellectual honesty here. They are so fucking dishonest. All right. Evidence you don't like or proves you wrong. So there is none of that, right? There's no evidence. I keep pleading for the evidence. Do they have any evidence here? Do they keep posting the link? I keep trying to post Gary this link, but he doesn't accept this link. Are they doing that? No. So they're linking to no evidence. Nothing. They won't link me to Professor Lewin doing something right, okay, on these subjects. They won't link me to any professor doing it right, because they know that doesn't exist. It's just so fucking dishonest to these people. Just tonight, or better yet, blatantly distort, falsify. So where's my distortion? I'm sitting here pleading with you to explain my distortion. Show me where I distorted. Stephen Brough just did an experiment where he used a model that was 5 to 1 to represent something that's 5,000 to 1. That's not distortion. All right, explain an experiment's results. Make up excuses that have no basis in there's no point in reading this, right? This is just too fucking stupid. All right, this Robert Ritchie guy, he needs a new asshole drilled in him, okay? He has made another video just saying complete horseshit about his anti-gravity shit, so I will rip him a new asshole just for the fun of it. Because I'm sick of this shit. He doesn't have anything to say here. You don't need to be commenting on these videos, you fucking little putz. You're a fucking insane kook, all right? You want me to show you as an insane kook? Then I will, okay? Another good video. Now, of course, it was a horrible video. So, again, you think you're going to do any good Sparky work? He thinks he's a really good Sparky. So, Sparky, you don't know the difference between 5,000 volts and 5 volts? Sparky? You're too stupid? You need to buy a notch filter spring. A notch filter spring. What the hell is that? I prefer notch filter spring to Smith charts any day. What the fuck is he talking about? Too stupid. Thanks, Robert. I have to confess you've gone right over my head. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you loop-de-doo kook. You got any chocolate chip cookies? It was a joke, Stephen. I thought you would have been familiar with Smith charts doing microwave work. It's just such a stupid. My little gyroscope demonstration is ready to film. Oh, great! That I'll have something to really mock and have fun with. He thinks he's got an anti-gravity machine, and he can save us all billions of dollars getting to Mars with his, gravity engine. Alright, wow, take all the time you need. Nothing's worth risking another heart attack. Oh, so he had a heart attack. Great. And you're just asking for trouble. It's all, I'll deliver. Okay, feet up or whatever the doc recommended. Just lost 2 friends. Oh, blah, blah, blah. They say 2 friends who probably took as shitty care of themselves as you have, you moron. Ugh, alright. So, Scott from Texas, who, generally speaking, is a fucking asshole. So, let's see if he verifies that. I think he has spoken about the tiny scale of this. So there you go. He's watched the videos. He knows that, oh yeah, Gary already talked about this. That the ellipse disappears with size. So the bigger I make it, the more invisible it becomes because it's only 1 fucking millimeter out of, meters of distance. You're not going to know that the circle is a little bit fat by 1 millimeter. Okay. I think he has spoken about this, the tiny scale of all this, and how impractical doing the string experiment would be with slits that would be used in the light experiment. Yes, it's only good as a way of understanding. As one line gets longer, the other line gets shorter. That's what it's good for. Okay. But you demonstrated the principle. So he demonstrated exactly the principle of how you do it wrong. He demonstrated the point that I made, that you will fail if you attempt to do it at these moronic proportions, because it's not accurate. Okay, I would think the effect would be less pronounced the closer the slits are, perhaps. Perhaps. So he only thinks it's perhaps. If the 2 focuses are closer and closer, the ellipse gets less and less. Duh. Alright, let's see what Steven says. Well, I've just wasted 4 hours of my life, or maybe it's only felt like 4 or 3 a bit, doing massive scaled up versions on the floor. And what will you find, Steve? Oh, it doesn't get as bad as much. But anyway. The floor of my largest room. My knees are killing. You're killing neurons. Although I want to double check some very small discrepancies in both directions, so to speak. It does appear that Gary's scaling argument is a red herring. Okay, so he's saying it doesn't matter. That it's still going to get, even though it's almost a perfect circle, the nodes are going to get 5 times bigger, 10 times bigger. That's rational to him. That it's like saying, like I said, if you were in an Earth orbit that was almost a perfect orbit, but it was just a little bit of an ellipse, so you had to go a little faster because you were closer to the Earth, and then you go a little slower, so you're sweeping equal distances. If I make it so small, a difference, that it's only like 1 mile an hour difference, so you're going 30,000 miles an hour, and I change 1 mile an hour, it's not going to mean you're going to sweep huge different distances anymore. What an idiot. Alright, anyway. I.e. that the same path length difference that causes these so he thinks he's going to do a 5,000 to 1 ratio experiment in his house. Very noticeable difference in fringe width where we have effectively modeled the screen as being very close. Still magnifies to exactly the same fringes on a much larger scale. So he's making the claim that the tinier, the closer you make the focuses, that somehow it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what shape the ellipse is. It's the same distortion. It's just idiotic. Okay. When you think about it, it would be odd for the angles of the straight line vectors, as I think Gary calls them, to change just because we have put the screen further away. No, it wouldn't be. It would be strange if they didn't change. How would the vectors know? They aren't vectors. That's the whole fucking point, you fucking idiot. The pieces are flying, okay, on vectors. The pieces. The reconstruction happens at locations. They have to be in phase. If it's in phase here, if I put it a little further out, it might not be in phase, because this ratio of these line differences are not going to be the same for each one of these locations. There's going to be an on and an off and an on and an off and an on and an off as you go on this straight line. So nothing travels that line except for the little pieces are traveling these straight lines. And there will be locations where this is an on and this is an off. And right above that, it's going to be off here and on here. And right above that, it'll be on here and off here. But whatever. Ugh, just too annoying. I will do some more checks to make sure I've not made any critical errors. Explain how a perfect circle could create different sweeps. That is, different angular amounts. So for the same angle, how it could create a different size on a perfect circle. Can't do that. Anyway, but in the meantime, in light of your question at the end, you will find the answer to that on Miss Miss's comment to Gary yesterday. That interactable model he made. I will find it and give you the link, as it's very good. Okay, so he's saying it's a good because he knows all of that math. Obviously, Stephen Brough doesn't know shit about math. So it's very complex math, and he's saying he knows that it gets the right answer. Obviously, I would say I don't think so. Okay, then you can see what happens with the thin slit better than I can describe it in words. The point is that you've made all these claims, and now you need to prove them. And you're not going to be able to, but whatever. Creaky, that took some finding with the sheer number of videos he's putting out in one day. Oh, come on. Most days it's one video per day. 92% of the time, no, 97% of the time, it's one video a day. Asshole. I was actually from July 31st anyhow. Worth looking at his whole comment. Very comprehensive. Many links, but here's the one I thought you would be interested in. So again, I've already read the comments. But anyway. what else is there to say? There's nothing else to say. So this is we've already looked at this and in a previous video. And in my opinion, this is math he took from some source and modified to this purpose. So we don't know what it represents. But I would argue what it does represent is again a very flawed ellipse to the proportions. That this distance isn't at all proportional to this distance. It's not 5,000 to 1. So again, it is an ellipse. Where at 5,000 to 1, it's going to be such a minor ellipse that you're not going to see any difference at all. So he just did what Stephen Brought did here. This is the same flawed analysis. Instead of having, it's not as bad as Steve's in the sense that, well, maybe it is. The math must be, because these are very divergent. I mean, these get wacky really quick. But if I was just going to look at it, I'd say, okay, well, this is pretty small, millimeter here, and we might have a circumference of 25, 30 centimeters. So 30 centimeters versus 1 millimeter, so it's a 30 to 1 ratio. Still a long way from 5,000 to 1. So he's got 30 to 1. Stephen had 5 to 1. But whatever. So anyway, so yes, Stephen likes this, even though Stephen doesn't know what any of this math is saying. He doesn't know how this is working, the simulator. He didn't know the one he keeps defending that's called the double slit simulator. He doesn't even understand that it doesn't have any slits in it. It's simulating no slits, and yet it's called the double slit simulator. I mean, he's too stupid to figure that out. And here he is insulting other people. Really dumb. Anyway, so this is just the nasty part of this job, but it's once in a while they keep making these assertions. Their proofs suck. So again, Stephen Brought has provided a reckless, sloppy, and stupid experiment because he didn't think about it first. He thinks he had it right, and of course he doesn't have it anywhere close. He's supposed to be drawing a rabbit, and he's drawing a frog. So this has been a DraftScience video presentation. Till the next time and such.